Welcome, everyone, to the eighth and the last interview in the webcast series, Voices from Gaia. My name is Mare Cromwell, and I have been so honored to host this series for the past 8 weeks. It's just been amazing and fun and so rich, and such wisdom has come forward. We've had exceptionally gifted communicators speaking for the dolphins, the whales, speaking with an owl live with us in Europe, in Holland. That was really amazing. And nature spirits and Sasquatch. And so this is our last interview. Again, it's important to share that Mother Gaia has specifically requested that I do this webcast series. It was really important for her, for more people to become more aware of the intelligence and wisdom from the other realms here of consciousness on the planet, beyond just the human realms. So our eighth interview tonight is with Woody Vaspra. And Woody is part native Hawaiian. He is a ceremonial leader, chief, and president and co-founder of the World Council of Elders and the International Sundance. Woody was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, and grew up on the North Shore of Oahu. I'm saying that right. In his formative years on Oahu, wild animals felt uncannily safe with him. And Woody shared a number of stories with me, and I'm just really excited that he's going to be sharing some of these and even more tonight with everybody here. But apparently wild dolphins would swim up to his surfboard and rest their heads on it, waiting for him to pet them. And Woody would do a lot of surfing. He was on the part of the coast there on Oahu where the big waves are, from what Woody's shared with me. And Woody's had numerous experience with the other species too. He's going to be talking more tonight about that. Woody was in Vietnam for 3 tours of duty and then went on to work in the U.S. Air Force Reserve for many years. And then he received the spiritual call in the late 90s to form the World Council of Elders. And in his capacity as elder liaison for the World Council of Elders, Woody has traveled extensively throughout the United States, Canada, Central and South America, and Australia, meeting with traditional indigenous wisdom carriers from many different cultures. As a native Hawaiian, Woody is readily accepted by members of other indigenous communities and is especially qualified and uniquely suited to work with them toward the World Council of Elders' goal of creating a worldwide organization of traditional indigenous wisdom keepers and spiritual leaders. Woody, along with his wife Katie, are co-hosts of the Gaia Wisdom Gathering to be held at Haverford College, June 2019. We're going to talk a little bit more about that at the end of the interview. I'm also involved with helping to organize that gathering, along with an esteemed philosophy professor at Haverford called Ashok Gangadine. So please note the websites here. The World Council of Elders website is Woody and his wife Katie's website for the work they do with these indigenous elders. And the GaiaWisdomGathering.org website is the one for the big event that's going to be in Pennsylvania in 2019. So, Woody, you and I have had numerous conversations, and so I would love to have you speak to us and help us learn about how to really embrace not just animals, but all living beings as family.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you everybody for being present at this wonderful time. Well, first I want to do is thank Mayor for introducing me, because when she asked me to introduce myself, I got a little embarrassed, because I come from a culture that we don't, in our language, in Hawaiian, we don't have the word I, because it's not about me or I, it's about we, all of us. And in Hawaiians, they were very close to the animal world, very close to the plant world, the rock world, the earth, and of course, you know about the volcanoes and all of that stuff. So what it is that we called everybody family. Our word for family in Hawaiian is ohana. And so ohana is everything, all that there is. In fact, we also operated what we call the spirit of aloha. Aloha in our language doesn't mean hello, goodbye. It means I love you. Hawaiians felt once you met, you were always connected. And the word of I love you means you were connected and very close. It wasn't what we, the modern world, thinks about it, but it was. So Hawaiians said you never left. When you said goodbye, it's not a goodbye. You're just going to be connected later on. So when we said goodbye, we said ahui ho, which means we see you again. And so that goes by how we feel about the animals. The animals were considered family. When I grew up, where I lived, there were birds all over the place. I mean, you get up with the birds and everything else, and they love to chatter. And then, of course, as Mayor mentioned, I grew up in the North Shore of Oahu. In a way, I look at it, it was a little bit of heaven. I grew up on a surfboard, and we were all swimming when we were 6 months old, practically, and on up. And we lived in the ocean. The water, the ocean itself was a being to us. So it was really nice to have that connection. Plus, we had the mountains. Where I lived on the North Shore, the Mount Ka'ala was right close by, which is the highest peak on Oahu. And so you could be on the ocean, look up and always see Mount Ka'ala or the Ku'ulau Range or what have you. And the North Shore at that time when I grew up was a big sugar plantation where my father worked. So everything, all those surfing spots that you heard about, Waimea Bay, Pipeline, Sunset Beach, Haleiwa and everything else, that was my backyard. So I was very, very fortunate for that.
Woody, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
In your childhood and in the Hawaiian culture, was the ocean considered like the great mother?
The ocean and the land?
The ocean, yeah, the Pacific. I mean, I'm sure that you had another name for the ocean.
It wasn't really the great mother. It was just part of our life. It was our dining table. Everything a lot of the food we ate came from the ocean. And we never caught more than we needed. Uh-huh. We always caught what we needed and never caught more because we always wanted to save fish for the people or the shellfish or the opihi or something like that for other people. We never stripped a place of food.
Right. And I guess I was just wondering when you were saying that your people, the Hawaiians, considered the ocean a being.
Yes, it was a living thing to us.
Uh-huh.
And I referred to it as grandmother or something like that.
Okay.
Because when I go home, it's the first thing I do is put my foot and go in the ocean.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm welcome back home. There's part of that.
Beautiful.
And it wasn't just the Hawaiians. All Native peoples looked at everything as living. And the trees, the rocks, all have life. And that's how I grew up. And I went to sleep here in the ocean and got up here in the ocean. In fact, my brother and I we could tell by the sound of the ocean whether the waves were up or not. We always sit there and look at each other and just laugh. And so we'd grab our surfboards and go out. But and you find that with many of the Native peoples, like the people in the Amazon, they looked at all life. And we didn't look at it. A good friend of mine was the master carver in Hawaii, and he said something to me which was, I thought, very interesting. You know, people say, oh, we call them gods and all, all of that. We don't use the word gods, deities. That's how we refer to all of this stuff. There's a deity, so we do that. But when I was young, one of the things, I love getting up early in the morning. I was an early riser, and I'd get on my surfboard. and go and paddle out and watch the sun rise above the mountains. And that was usually nice because the water was always very nice. It's nice and smooth. We call it glassy. I could see about 25 to 30, 35 feet, maybe 40 feet down below. And I'll be sitting there and I'll be nice. It was like my moment of meditation. And then once in a while, there'll be a pod of dolphins and they would come up to me and they want to play. And I would kind of put my fingers up to my lips and go, shh, and point to the sun. And they would quiet. They would become quiet.
I love it.
They would put their head on my surfboard and I reach over and give them a pat and all this stuff. And then as soon as the sun came up, I said this, and I would go, the sun's up. And then I would start paddling. They were right there with me and I'd catch a wave. And I looked down and they would be right next to my surfboard. And that was I had many instances of that and we got to be friends. And feel that I always felt we could communicate, not in an oral way, but in a way that we could understand each other. And it got to be really good. And then one particular moment when we were sitting there, a big whale breached. And all I remember is that he slapped his tail on the water and created this huge, monstrous vibration. You could just feel your body just shake. And I said, oh, he's talking to us. And then all the chattering and everything going on. So the animals all have a different way how they can communicate and stuff like that, because the whales, they have their songs and everything else. A friend of mine lived on the Big Island and heard a mother giving birth because her sound went through the lava and up the land, and you could hear her sound.
Oh my gosh.
It was really fan. And got up the next morning, there she was showing off her baby to everybody on the coast.
Wow.
And everything else. So they're and then the thing I like to mention when I said earlier about we don't have I, well, animals don't have I in their language. But what they always believe in we and what they share. They're always giving. And this is where I think the human beings need to go back to.
Well, and it's interesting, Woody, because several weeks ago we had Jacqueline Freeman as on the webcast series, and she focuses on the bees and communicates with the bees and really brought home the point that it's about unity. Yes. It's not about any individual bee. There's no sense of a consciousness in just one bee from what she's learned. So you're obviously, greatly supporting what some of the other people have been sharing, but you
Sure.
saw it there in the ocean all around you with the dolphins and the whales and the...
Well, when you attended the Sundance and everything else, that we always started our ceremonies and ended the ceremonies saying we are all related. And that means we're related not just to other humans, but all living things. So that's that spirit of Ohana that we all feel, because we're all related, no matter where we are. And another thing I'll always like to teach is that we talk about indigenous. What is indigenous? And I always tell everybody, every human on this planet is indigenous. They're just indigenous to where their ancestors came from. And so that's how I look at it. And that's how we look. We're all brothers and sisters and everything else. And that also goes for the animal world. And they know. They have that sixth sense, a very well developed sixth sense that they know. They know when we fear them. We know when we're comfortable with them and what have you. They know that.
Yeah.
So they're very lucky for that.
They can feel the energy in a millisecond.
So that's how I look at family. I look at them as, and for me, I have to personalize it. I look at Adam as a brother and a sister and what have you. And I'll get down with them. And I was with the buffalo in Montana where we visited for many years. A friend had a buffalo ranch. And I would go there for weeks on end and then just sit with the buffalo. And I find buffalo so family oriented. and everything else, they know who they are. And it was just an honor to sit with them. And they got to where they knew you and remembered you. They always remembered me coming because they could hear my truck. I drove a 1-ton diesel truck because I pulled a trailer. And they could hear that. They knew that sound.
Mm.
It was really amazing. In fact, that ranch also had a herd of paint horses, and about 18 of them. And when I would show up, they would not let me in the ranch. They would block the gate, all standing there, and they would wait for their hug before they would step back and let me through. And everything else. And so it was like a family. Everything.
So,
it was.
Will you tell the story, or maybe you're about to get there, of the one buffalo for the ceremony? It's my understanding, and I can't tell the story for you, but you did ceremony, and the buffalo herd knew that you needed the meat from one buffalo. Can you talk about that story?
Yes, I will. One of the things that I did, I was very fortunate. I did attend many ceremonies, many of the different nations around, especially in South and North Dakota and Montana and what have you. And we were going to, and I would, when I danced, I always took a buffalo, because the buffalo was being honored. That's so important because the buffalo brought life, and they knew that, and they knew they were going to be honored. So when they were going to be the ceremony and we'll have to do the harvest, never have to go up to them. I'll do the ceremonies. They taught me the prayers and everything, and when it came time, the alpha buffalo, which we named Buffy, would always come and lick us before we did the ceremonies to say it was okay. And we would do that ceremony. And so this particular time, we were starting a Sundance, a new Sundance, and we were going to harvest the buffalo, and we did. The buffalo showed itself. And you bring it down a certain way, very special way. And this particular time, the grandfather of this buffalo herd was huge. His name was Junior, of all things. And he was very big. And so anyway, Junior was there, and Joe, the ranch manager, brought the buffalo, harvested the buffalo, and Junior went there, and he stood the buffalo up. And the buffalo walked and then fell over again. The gentleman I was with was very upset because he knew that he didn't want that to happen. So finally, he did what he needed to do. Junior went, smelled, and walked away. I went over there to put the medicines, to put the special medicines when you harvest the buffalo to honor the buffalo. And what happened was, as I was doing that, and I was standing on the back, rubbing it over through his back to his head. My left hand was on top of his head. And the buffalo, right at the time I put my hand right on top of his head, he let out this big breath of air. And when that happened, I felt this electric shock come right through my body, and I fell over the buffalo. And I don't know how long I was out, might be just a few seconds or something, but there were 8 people standing about 40 yards away. I looked up, and their eyes were big as silver dollars. They were like, whoa. And I could feel all that stuff in my body. And I just felt the spirit of the buffalo come in me. But I wanted to finish the medicines to honor him. So I really felt it, because when I went over, what I felt was just peace. Peace that I can't even explain or describe. It was just so peaceful. So when I finished, and we had to do a medicine, a special ceremony. So we're cleaning out the buffalo, and I had some blood in my hands. The friend of mine that was helping was doing that. He looked up. He says, "Woody, Junior's in the back of you." So I stood up and I put my hands out to Junior, and he licked all the blood off my hands.
Wow.
And then he stood back and he looked at me again. And he kind of gave me a little nod of his head, which I understood completely. So I walked out of the circle, went about 100 yards, and waited for him. He walked around. And he came directly right up to me, and he put the top of his head right into my heart. And both he and I were just leaning into each other. And I started to cry. I was like, tears are rolling down. And
Wow.
he just saw me, and it was just such a special moment he had, that we both had. And because that friend of his, that was his friend that we harvested, his friend was going to be honored at this very special Sundance. And he was saying, and he was telling me, his spirit is now in you. Take very good care of him. And I told him, and I hugged him. And you know, it's amazing, and it's still with me always through this day. And
Wow. So Junior, the alpha buffalo, communicated that the spirit of the buffalo that was
my
killed
heart.
for the ceremony went into your heart.
Yeah, that's how I feel that way. So I have his robe and everything else, and that's the robe of the Sundance.
Uh-huh.
That is the robe of the International Sundance, and so that is how animals can really feel. I consider buffalo land dolphins.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because when Mary Gedden was here in the webcast series, and she's a whale communicator and animal communicator, she got the sense when she was out, I guess in North Dakota, someplace in the plains, and saw the herd of buffalo, and she could communicate with them and tune in, and she got a message on the spirit planes that the buffalo are like the whales of the land, and they're working the energy in the ley lines the way the whales work the energy in the oceans, which is very similar to the dolphins too.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's interesting.
In fact, their hooves are designed so that when they walk around the land, they actually is almost farming the land. Indigenous grasses come back when they walk the land, because they're not like cows, where cows destroy everything. Buffalo actually bring things back to life. And they don't eat all day. They eat a certain time and go a certain time. They don't destroy a water hole. They're very respectful of that and everything else. And it's very, very interesting, just wonderful to watch them.
Yeah. I
And
would imagine.
so it's a wonderful experience to have that and everything else. And so they, just like at that particular ranch, when the ranch created the herd, they had a very bad winter. And so what the buffalo did, so everybody in to keep warm, the house was kind of cold. They all came close to the house to surround the house to help keep the heat in.
You're kidding. The buffalo herd did that?
Yeah, yes. On their own. Nobody told them.
They're probably doing that this winter too, because they're having a heck of a winter out there in Montana and the Dakotas.
So so they're very special. That's just one of many. That's, you know, another is, you know, whales. I used to love watching them, and we did the ceremony in Hawaii. They'll be off the coast. Frank, you didn't meet Frank.
No, I didn't meet Frank. Maybe you could let people know who Frank is. Yeah.
Elder. And Frank just loved seeing the whales. He'd get so excited, and he'd jump up and down. But the whales are we're so great and stuff like this. So these are just some of the instances of how animals can communicate with you, and they can bring something in us, which I think is very important, is help us go back to feeling. Because this is something that we have forgot to do as a human race, go back to feeling. And we go back to feeling, we can open our heart and not let all this modern day stuff completely take over and everything else. Feeling is in our heart. We know who we are. It's our emotional center and what have you. So it must go back to feeling, and animals can be our fantastic teachers to bring us back into the center of where we should be and bring us connected to the ground. So all the different animals taught over the last 7 weeks, all those animals were doing that.
Yeah.
Bringing us back into center of what we should be as a human race, the caretakers of this planet. We're given many gifts. We've got 2 hands, 2 feet, a brain, and all of those different things is it can help bring this planet back into better shape than what we have it right now.
Woody, do you want to talk about the owls in Hawaii? Because you've had some experiences with them, and they're I know that when we were talking the other day, there's a name for them that you have in the language.
Well, in Hawaii, we always believe that we all have spirit. We have our families, like when they die, they become the spirit of the family. We call them aumakua, and they're our spiritual teachers and guardians. And so when you grow up, you have your animal guardians. Mine happens to be the owl, and we call it the poel. And they're different colors. You have one that during the day they're kind of brown. Then you have what we call the white poel that comes off the cliffs and the mountains and come down, and they feed on the fish. They have very wonderful eyesight. So the poel just happens to be mine. And there's one particular time I was in Hawaii where the cliffs were near the places that was on the, we call it the windward side of the island down by Waimanalo in that area. And I was with a friend. And it was in the evening. And he said, let's sit here and be quiet and see the owls come down. Sure enough, they kept on coming down. And they would see them go to the ocean, because there was a little bit of extraneous light that you could see them. And they would turn their wings and kind of like, it'd be like a flash. And this particular time, we were sitting there, this one owl came straight for us. In fact, we could even barely see it. And all of a sudden it stopped and hovered about 3 feet away from me. And I saw that, and of course, my friend was going crazy, and I said, keep quiet, say some prayers. I thanked him and started praying with him. Started thanking and acknowledging and thanking him very much. And he didn't stay there just for a few seconds. He stayed there for quite a while. Then he took off, circled up again, and came right in front of us again. And I thanked him. I said, wow, you really have confirmed that you're my aumakua. And then he took off and everything. And that was a wonderful experience with the poel, the Hawaiian owl.
So when you were saying aumakua and you were talking about ancestors, family members who passed, were you saying that the family members can come back as your aumakua?
Yeah, yes. We believe that they were there to help guide us through life and everything else. And they're like, we call them angels, so they could probably be called angels themselves.
Yeah.
And everything else. So Hawaiians felt that they were there to help us and guide the family and be there. And yeah, and I know that because when my grandmother died in Hawaii, I happened to be in Vietnam at this time, and I came back through Hawaii. Now my mom took me to see her. I had no idea where she was, and she's buried in the back of Diamond Head. And she stopped the car. My grandfather was with my aunt behind us in another car. And I got out the car and I walked straight line and walked to a spot that I knew where she was, and sure enough, their headstone was right there.
Wow.
And then my mom brought my grandfather with his chair to sit down next to me, and he was my teacher, by the way, of all my culture. And I was sitting there, kneeling down and talking to my grandmother like she was alive, and both of he and I were. And then all of a sudden, my mom's, because it was a very cloudy day, she said, all of a sudden the clouds opened up and this yellow beam came right over my grandfather and me.
Wow, that's powerful.
And they stayed there for a while we visited with her, and I visited with her. I felt I was very close to my grandparents and everything else. And it was her saying her goodbye.
Uh-huh.
Have you? And so, those are kind of experiences. And when I was a kid growing up, I had a lot of spiritual experiences. Hawaii is a very special place, and I was very honored to be a part of those islands, a part of the family and the lineages.
Yeah.
Like that. So, and there's another thing talking about Hawaii that you and I talked about, and you wanted me to make sure that I told you, is that this is how close the Hawaiians were to the animals, especially the ocean, because we didn't have really big animals. No elephants and tigers and lions. Hawaii is just a small island. It had a lot of birds, because the birds would fly across the ocean, get stuck, and all of a sudden they found an island, and they said they would stay there. Is there's no snakes in Hawaii and stuff like that, and anything that's a four-legged was usually brought over by somebody by a ship. That was after the Europeans came to Hawaii, but before that they didn't have. So anyway, they Hawaiians could talk to the animals, and in this a very traditional way is they would able to talk to the sharks. And what they would do is the islands were split up into different living, like little communities, and the coast of the island was different communities, and that's where they in that community had that particular part of the coast where they would go fishing. And to protect their fishing rights, they would employ a shark to patrol the waters. And they would feed them, and call the shark in, feed them, take all the barnacles, clean them up and everything else, and go out and he could do his duty. And that has existed for many years, and still in some areas is still kind of going on, but very quietly and stuff like that. But it was amazing when I heard that it was still in existence.
And this was a great white shark, right? Or is a great white shark?
This one was not a great white. I believe it was the one I was thinking of. The one I'm thinking of was a tiger shark.
Uh-huh.
A good size one. I think it was about 16, 17 feet.
Wow.
And everything else. But, a lot of the native peoples had animals. Moogie said in Australia, his people were the coastal people, and they were able to communicate with the whales too.
And Moogie is Aboriginal
Yes.
in Australia.
Aboriginal from South Australia, yes.
Yeah.
So, it's just amazing. Then, of course, you had the buffalo here, where all the different stories you hear, and you just go all around that and how they became because, and the animals were providers, nurturers. Many of the tribes couldn't have existed if it wasn't for the buffalo. But the first thing is they always honored the buffalo.
Yeah.
And everything else. So that is very, to me, very important and stuff like that.
So I want to get back to this relationship with the shark in the bay. So this is the kind of shark that, from I would say, from a modern American's viewpoint, this would be a dangerous shark for most of us. We would consider that shark that way, right?
Yes.
And so for many, you're saying for many, many generations, these sharks became part of the community.
Yes.
And they probably knew which fishermen or which, village members were going to be the ones to come out and clean the barnacles off of it and feed it.
Yes.
And were the sharks then helping to keep other predatory fish away from the bay so that the people
Yes.
would have more fish to eat?
Yeah, predatory and keep people. A friend of mine said, "Yeah, we tell them just to nip people. Don't bite them.
Oh
Kind of
my God.
scare them off."
Just a little lick.
Yeah, like that. It was amazing. I'm sitting there going, "Wow." And it was. They would prevent other sharks, protect it from other sharks and what have you. And so it's just an amazing thing of how they could do it.
Yeah, and they're still doing it, you're saying. This is still happening
In
very
certain
quietly.
areas, they probably are. They're not mentioning, or it's been very quiet.
Yeah, yeah. And we would not give any names or encourage people to go visit those villages. But you also said to me when we were talking the other day, Woody, about how the owls are messengers between the kahunas.
Yeah, and well, one of the stories in Hawaii is where the owls nest, and they could also connect with them. Is they would, if they needed to get a message to somebody in another island, they would call in an owl, and they would put a little message, something on the leg, and he would take off to that island. Hawaiians didn't have a written, so they used little pictures and everything else in the language that they used. And I don't know if anybody has seen the petroglyphs in Hawaii and everything else. That's picture language. So they would use a little message or something to that owl, and he would take that message and go and share it.
And these were wild owls?
Oh yes, they weren't domesticated.
Yeah,
None of the
yeah.
animals I mentioned to you were domesticated.
Right, right. Well, I remember reading in a book that, and you know Evan Pritchard too, a book called
Yeah.
Bird Medicine, where when a medicine person wanted to send a communication to another medicine person in another village that was a number of miles away, they would offer tobacco at the base of the tree where the eagle was.
Mm-hmm.
And then the eagle would take off and fly to the other village where the other elder was. And it was telepathic communication. And
Mm-hmm.
once the other elder in the other village saw the eagle, they would receive the message.
Yeah.
So there's this rapport with the birds is fascinating and beautiful, really beautiful.
Yeah, there's like up in Lake Huron with the Ojibwe people, they had a ceremonial place they called, and it was a ceremonial place on, because there's a freshwater island on the northern part of Lake Huron on the Great Lakes that's called Manitoulin. It's the biggest freshwater island in this continent. And then there was a very ceremonial place. So when they needed representatives from different tribes, they had 4 rocks. They call them the bell rocks. And they would hit the bell rocks in a certain way, and that vibration go all across the lake for miles. And the people would feel that vibration, and they said, "Okay, time." So they all would show up. And at the
Wow.
ceremonial place, and they would do their ceremonies and stuff like that.
And how many miles would they be coming from? How many miles away?
50, 60, sometimes 70, maybe 100 miles.
And they would be so tuned in to the vibration
Yeah.
of the water and the sounds of those stones being hit.
Yes.
Wow.
So they had something that we've kind of left because we've got so many different things to keep our minds separated from ourselves. Is they could sense things that we can't nowadays, and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I said we have to bring ourselves and go back to feeling.
But there's still elders that do have these gifts and are learning the gifts from other elders, older elders, right?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and everything else. Because there's another thing is in the animal sense is we're all connected by the energy fields, energy. The animals feel that.
Oh, yeah.
They know that. And then you can communicate through that and everything else. So it's a wonderful, wonderful. It's not magic or anything. It's stuff that they were able to learn over the thousands of years and everything else, and to employ them to help them and how to heal.
Right.
You know, there were a lot of medicine people. Not all of them used medicines. They used the energies to help heal.
And some of them are very powerful.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Did you want to talk at all about your hummingbird experience in Colombia?
Well, that was another, we had, because of the work we're doing with the elders, we were invited to go up to northern Colombia to a set of mountains called the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. And up there, there's a group of people called the Tairona people. And one of the tribes, a lot of people may have heard them, is called the Kogi, but there's actually 4 different tribes out of the 6 that were there. I think 2 have kind of disappeared. And one was the Kogi, and there's the Atawarco, Shario, the Canquamo. And they invited us to come up to the mountains to discuss prophecy and their teachings of their life. And they were one of the few people that missed the Spanish invasion. They were up there. Those mountains, a lot of people were afraid of them, so the Spaniards left it alone. And they live up in the 12, 14, 15,000 foot area. And so we were invited to go and meet with them. So we caught a plane, and we had my Mayan brother and sister and several other people, other elders. We went up there, and on the way there, we got up there, and then we finally made the trek up, because it's a special way how you get up there, because there's no roads, and they don't want people just walking up there. So they had people waiting for us, so we made it up there. And it was very beautiful, very pure. The people still wear their traditional clothing and stuff like that. So we had a wonderful evening with them, got up the next day, and then we met with, they call their spiritual elder Mamos. And we met with one of the Mamos, and we were sitting down, and we were sitting near the water. Water is very sacred to them. So we were sitting on this very nice, beautiful, kind of a roundish rock. It was a beautiful day up in the mountains. And I had my Hawaiian kihei, which is a certain ceremonial thing we wear, and they asked me to wear that, so I did that. So I had it kind of off my shoulder. It leaves one of the shoulders bare. So I was sitting there, and then the Mamos asked everybody to kind of saying what they did, what was their reason for being there, and what did they do in their life and everything else. And so we had 2 Mayan priestess, and several other folks. And Katie was sitting next to me, and she explained our work with the elders. And she was explaining, and this rock was kind of next to this small little cliff. It was about maybe 15, 20 foot high. All of a sudden, this thing, and I took my glasses off, and I saw this thing come around over our heads. It circled our heads, came around again, and it landed right on my left shoulder. And it was a hummingbird from that region. It was bigger than the American hummingbirds. It was a good size, but it was a hummingbird, very long beak, and landed on my left shoulder. And when that happened, I went, And I could feel his claws holding onto my skin. And I kind of just looked down, and he looked black, green, and yellow with some red. And I looked down, and he spread his tail, and he started to tap me with it.
Oh, really?
Yes. And he stood there, and he didn't sit there for 15 seconds. It was about 2 minutes. And I looked around, everybody's eyes were again very big as silver dollars. And I looked at the Mamos, and he stood there with this grin on his face. And nobody said anything, just let the hummingbird do its thing. You know, it took off. It was time for me to speak. And before I could say a word, the Mamos told me, he says, Woody, don't speak, you're already spoken for. And that's the story of the hummingbird and stuff like that. And so it was, and that was just unexpected. It was not something that was planned or anything.
No, you can't plan those things. But you know, you've shared with me, and I know this is not about your ego or anything like that, but you've shared with me you've had so many really close experiences with animals, and you know, remind me again. I guess it took you a while to realize that not everyone was having these types of experiences.
Yes, and I just feel honored, but I've always wondered why. Why didn't other people have it? And what it is that animals know when you have your heart open and you can feel them. That's that sixth sense. And we all have that gift. We just need to how to open and reconnect our hearts to the universe, to the planet, and everything else. And those animals will know them before you know it, and everything else. Because we've got so much junk around us. Different things that are distracting us.
Right.
So if we all have the gift and everything. I said the elders would say that they all themselves. I said they all have that gift and everything else. So
you were talking when we spoke the other day about bringing the white light into your energy body.
that falls right in love with what we just said. Yeah.
Yeah.
When people come to me and want to ask what they can do, and I said, well, I point to the woods, the forest, the mountains. Go up and go near a tree and a rock, preferably, or what have you. Sit there, not for 15 minutes, for 4 or 5 or 6 hours, and listen to Mother Nature. Listen to the birds. Try to pick a place there's no traffic.
Right.
And just open your heart and listen. And while you're doing that, just imagine that white light, like the sunlight, or the white light from above is coming through you, right through you and into Mother Earth, into Gaia. And just feel that. And just let your body relax. And just feel that white light. And then at times, let it go through your heart and out to your heart to send love to everything around you. Because that is why we're here, is to give. And so that's how I tell people. And when they come back, and I'll just look at them, and before I can even open my mouth, they'll say, oh, I feel a lot better. I said, well, you know who the healer is.
Yeah.
Mother Earth.
Yeah.
The animals, the trees, the wind, the water.
Yeah, I teach people that a lot in my events is, you know, Earth Mother is hardwired to heal, and she's the ultimate healer. Ultimate healer.
And she provides other medicines for us to do some physical healing too.
Yep.
And I saw something. Santana was being on TV last night. Kate and I watched him, and he was being interviewed by the gentleman that used to be newsman on ABC, and I can see his face. And he asked Santana, when Santana mentioned medicine, and he mentioned also drugs, and Santana said, drugs are man-made. True medicines are made by Mother Earth. She goes in the ground, and you take those medicines and you make them, and everything else. He said, that's what I call real medicine. He says, drugs are made in a lab and everything else. And I thought that was a really good description.
Huh.
Because a lot of the medicines to this day had come from traditional people.
Oh, yeah.
And everything else. And so it's, so that was, I thought that was really good because medicine is not just physical medicine, there's spiritual medicine. We're medicine to each other. We help each other. Helping each other is a way of medicine. Life is medicine. Ceremony is medicine.
Oh, ceremony is big medicine.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all of life, just like I always mention to everybody, all of life is a ceremony. Just look at it. We get up every morning, the sun is rising. We know it's going to rise in the east. I'll be like someday it might rise in the west. but,
Not yet. We haven't gotten there yet.
but no, life is medicine. Everything, love is medicine. Anything makes us feel good and get centered and has connection to us is medicine.
So Woody, I have a question for you. We didn't talk about this before, but is there something that you do on a daily basis to connect with Earth Mother?
I get my feet on it.
Uh-huh.
My main thing is to get my feet on her and to feel that, and to and I always look out the window to the mountains.
Uh-huh.
And to me, and the sky. As soon as I can feel that, I relax.
So do you go barefoot outside, or you're just getting
Well, I'll have to use shoes, but don't use cement shoes because they're not doing. But leather shoes are okay or something like that. But
yeah, no rubber, no
it's
rubber.
just feeling everything. And I think most important is when I wake up, I always use gratitude. Thank you for the new day. Gratitude is another wonderful gift we have. We learn how to thank
Yeah.
ancestors, Mother Earth, Grandmother Gaia, all the living things, because we're all here. And that gratitude is so important. It helps us feel good that we're giving something and giving something every day.
I met an Apache young man one time who was a Sundancer too, and he said that it's important to say thank you 100 times in the morning to start your day. I mean, what a powerful way to open up to gratitude and abundance and just giving that energy out. It's huge.
And to share that love from that white light, because I always tell people, don't just go in the white light is something you can do even in your living room, in your bedroom, what have you. Just let it come through you.
Yeah.
And spread out that white and live what you say and what you preach. Being a good example and help people and all. There's nothing so wonderful to help an animal or help another human being or something and be there for them.
So, Woody, I have a question. And you and I didn't talk about this, but we've got a little bit of time. Would you be open to me opening this up to questions from people who are listening in and watching?
Sure.
All right. So I'm going to open this up, and we've done this in a couple of the other interviews. So if people have questions for Woody, feel free to type them into the chat box, which is at the bottom of your screen. You can open it up. Just click on chat. I feel so blessed to have to be connected with you, Woody, with you and your wife, Katie. You brought such a richness to my life, and so much wisdom that you share on a regular basis. So no one's posting any questions yet. Let's see. Do you want to talk about your childhood? Are you open to talking about your childhood and your grandfather, or is that something you'd rather not do?
Well, I can say some stuff. I was very honored that my mom was native Hawaiian. That's where I get my Hawaiian from. And my grandfather, of course, her dad was native Hawaiian, and he was my teacher. And he taught me the language when I was a little boy, so I could speak some of it. I've lost some of it because if you don't use it, you lose it. But in Hawaii, when I grew up in the 50s and 60s, there was a trend that was slowly happening to get away from the culture, but that has been changed too. And so what he did, he used to do, and he loved afternoons, and he would, I would sit with him in the backyard very quietly. And I knew when he told me not to say anything, I'd sit there. But after you're 4 or 5 years old, you get a little antsy, and I used to tug on his shirt and says, Tutu, how come we don't talk? Or I spoke pidgin. I said, how come we don't talk? He says, we're talking plenty, just listen. And that was how teaching was done. And when I had my mentor, Grandfather Realm Commander, who I was very honored to have from Canada, he and I would sit in his back porch, not say a word, and just sit there on the rocking chairs and be sharing information. And only time I would talk, it says, "You ready for lunch?" Stuff like that. A lot of the teachings, well, is not about putting it in our head. Our teachings, we put it in your heart. As Frank used to, and my grandfather says, absorb it into your heart. And
Right.
you'd be surprised how much you will remember.
Yeah.
You absorb it.
So Woody, we have a question here. It's a big one. So however you feel comfortable, but I'll read the question. Would Woody be willing to talk about the earth changes / ascension and about the prophecies that would guide us if they can be shared?
I can speak in general about the prophecies. And many of them do interconnect, surprising enough, between different cultures. But one of the prophecies I'm familiar with, and I heard grandfathers speak about them.
Grandfather Commander, you mean?
Commander,
Yeah.
and also the elder from the Hopi, was grandfather's prophecy, Commander's prophecy, the prophecy of the seven fires was actually different from the Hopi prophecies. The one in the seven fires was about what happened to the people of the Northeast throughout the ages, throughout the different era. And the fire is really an era, a period of time. So there was the seven eras, the seven fires, how that was translated from Algonquin into English. And about 10 years ago, grandfather called me up and said wanted me to go up to Ottawa so they could do the ceremony. And I said, "Which one is this?" He says, "We're going to light the eighth fire." And I went, "Whoa, okay." But I found out I already had an event that I had to go to, so I called my friend up in Canada to go and sit for me, which he did. But grandfather, said you were there no matter what.
Oh, so you weren't able to make it with Grandfather Commander?
Yeah, because
which, by the way, for those who are listening, Grandfather Commander was Algonquin, which is actually a collection of a number of tribes. So he was a member of a specific tribe within the Algonquin nation, right?
Well, but he was the Algonquin. Algonquin was considered the first peoples of the northeast part of the continent.
Okay.
And many different peoples have derived from them. And you can hear it in their language. Just like the Ojibwe, and the Ojibwe language and Algonquin language are almost the same. And they can understand each other. And there's other people. The Algonquin actually, grandfather told me, lived in the coast, New Brunswick, all the way down through Maine into New England. And however, they, through their prophecies and their visions, they knew that people were going to come from the east and do havoc on this continent. So they moved inland towards Canada. Remember, Canada and the U.S. wasn't split apart. There was all one continent. They moved inland and everything else. And they tried to tell other tribes to do that. Some stayed behind. Well, guess what? They were the first one to encounter that, and they got acclimated into the Western culture, and some got destroyed and what have you, lost their language and what have you. Yeah. So anyway, grandfather was the elder. Many people in Canada really respected him. He was very well respected. He was the builder of the birch bark canoes and stuff like this. And he carried the prophecy of the seven fires. So the eighth part of the prophecy, which I had the honor to speak, to share it during the event. He had me learn it, and he had an event at his reserve. They call them reserves in Canada, that his father started a while back. That the eighth fire, it says in the prophecy that the carrier of the prophecy can light the eighth fire. What the eighth fire will do is to bring brotherhood between all living things, all men and all animals, and what have you, to bring that brotherhood back. And this is what the elders and other prophecy carriers have saying. We must come back to one, to being connected, to rejoin, for a good example, that puzzle and everything else. So the eighth fire was lit. And we do have through those prophecies that the human race can continue, because we were very close to being obliterated on this earth and still have. But the whole idea, we'll all have positive attitudes centered, and we put that out there. The human race is going to do really well. We just must come back to that brotherhood.
So, what's interesting, Woody, is this webcast series is partly fulfilling that, isn't it?
Yes.
People who have been watching this and tuning in know that this was guided by Mother Gaia. She asked me to do it. And there are so many other people working on these planes of helping us reconnect and come back to the oneness.
And that's part of what the Gaia Wisdom Gathering is about, too.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that in another moment. There is another question. Is it okay if I ask another question from somebody?
I hope I answered the question of that individual.
Yeah, well, I feel like you did. And we're going to talk a little bit more in a few minutes, everybody listening in, watching, about the Gaia Wisdom Gathering, because that's bringing a number of indigenous wisdom carriers together to speak on the prophecies and more what's going on the planet right now in 2019. But here's the question from Nave. Oh, interesting. Jillian, who asked that first question, she said, "Thank you so much. I got chills. So grateful the eighth fire was lit." She could feel the energy coming through there, Woody. That's beautiful. So, okay, the question is, I am curious if Woody has advice for people how to connect with their heart daily. That's question one. The second question is, also, does he have any advice for working with teenagers in this digital world and how they can stay connected to their hearts?
Well, that's loaded. Both of them are very powerful questions. I'll start with the first one. How to connect. And I'm going to simplify it. In India, they have the different chakras, the 7 chakras. And many of people like the Hawaiians, we only have the 3. We have your heart, mind, and body, and your spirit. And so mind, body, and spirit. So what I always tell people is find a very quiet location in your house or something and sit there and just feel that white light coming down. That's the spirit light coming through your brain into your heart, and bring that power up from your lower part of your body up into your heart, and just connect that. And the best way to do it is really outside on the ground with your feet on Mother Earth, and sit there and just very quietly. And it's sort of a meditation. If you want to meditate, Tibetan style or all those, that's great too, but not. I like quiet. I'll sit there quiet and listen to the birds and the trees. They're my messengers. And just feel your body connect and everything else. And just listen to your body and feel your body, and to connect the mind, body, and spirit into one. Because that's what happened, is the mind, body, and spirit has gotten separated. We must bring that, because one of the journeys that the human race must redo to reconnect is to connect that mind to the heart. That 18 inches is one of the hardest journeys that we will ever do. So we must reconnect that mind to the heart, and just connect up and down that path right there, and just open it up and sit there. And don't do it for 2 minutes. Do it for a while, as long as you feel comfortable, and just feel it. And do it as much as you want. Don't do it once, do it once a day for a while, and then you can quit, and then do it periodically. That's up to you. I can't really give you a formula. It's how you feel. And just connect yourself to that. All living things around you. and stuff like that. And, if you want to hold a rock and a branch in one hand, that kind of helps out too, and stuff like that. Because that rock has so much knowledge. They're the oldest being. I call them a rock is a being because there's energy in that rock anyway. It's got atoms and all that stuff on the planet and everything else. And that tree is like that messenger between the spirit world and the planet and what have you. So it's that thing. So just sit there and just feel your heart and it's probably like a grounding. And that's what we do in ceremonies. Ceremonies are about healing. And this is a healing, but it also, you have to do it periodically, because we do allow ourselves to get a little taken out of our sequence or what have you. So, in fact, here is a very good story I like to share.
Okay.
In Hawaii, when you were young, as a young child, you were taught a story. It's a very simple story. It's called the Bowl of Light. And they'd say, take your hands and hold it in front of you like you're holding a bowl. And when you're young, as a baby and 5 years old, you are the children of light. So you're looking down that bowl and it's all full of light. But as you get older, you get to be rascal and start doing some naughty things. And guess what happens? All of a sudden a rock appears. And if you keep on doing not so good things and getting your parents mad at you or somebody, so pretty soon that light's all blocked because you've got so many rocks in there. So what they always say is that the Creator gave us this wonderful gift of choice. We can take our hands and turn it over and drop all those rocks out and bring ourselves back into that light. And this is why I said, this is the thing of letting that light come into you and help you center. So that's called the bowl of light. And it's something I tell people, share with everybody. Share with their kids, your grandkids and what have you, that there are the children of the light. Because the kids come in so pure. It's we that mess them up.
Yeah, yeah.
So that bowl of light, and you can bring yourself, and that's a way of healing. In the Hawaiian way of life, there's a very special healing that they're still using in Hawaii. It's called ho'oponopono. It's called making it right, and what have you.
Yeah, and I would think a lot of people who are listening or watching this tonight know about ho'oponopono, but if you want to share a little bit.
It's a process to, because in our life we have a tendency to get people mad at us and doom, and, gossiping, what have you. And it doesn't have to where you have to confront an individual. Remember I said how we're connected by energy fields? You can do this remotely. And if you want to heal, and families in Hawaii did that 2-3 times a year, all get together and they will do ho'oponopono and heal between themselves, get back things into making it right.
Yeah.
Is to sit down and just picture that individual that you forgive them and you forgive yourself. And you ask them to forgive you. And that's all you have to do. And you say it a few times. I forgive you, and you would forgive me. And once you do with that, say thank you. That gratitude is so important. Then after that, say, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
Those 4 steps is what makes that ho'oponopono. But the most important thing is get yourself centered. Remember I talked about getting that spirit, and we just talked about it.
Yeah, the white light.
You can heal. And this is a very quick and dirty because I just got done 2 hours on it.
Yeah, you got the synopsis there. So
that's a little bit about it.
So what about this question? This is a tough question. Any advice for teenagers in this digital world and how they can stay connected to their hearts?
Well, one thing is gonna have to be disciplinarian. Is pull them away from that digital world. Let them see the natural world and everything else. I had a friend of mine that was teaching in the Hawaiian schools in Hawaii, and he asked them to, you know, draw a fish. They only knew fish from the computer. So what he did, he arranged a field trip and took him down to the docks to go down and see the fish and smell the fish, smell all of that, to feel it. So I think with teenagers, they need to be reintroduced to the natural world and to be acknowledged that they are they're true being. In fact, we have where we live right now, we have what's called there's a program of restorative justice, where restorative justice is a traditional way of healing someone who's committed a crime or not so good thing. And rather than go take them to a court and put them in jail or some teenage home or something like that, they work in healing. So, and it's retribution, and both the victim and the perpetrator get together and forgive each other, and that person does something for the community, to realize that they're still a part of the community, and they realize that. So a lot of the teenagers like to feel like they're part of the community, feel a part, that they're different. And to me, my son, who's vice president of he's very high up in a computer type company, he shuts all the boys' stuff down. He gets them outside. He has them soccer and all that stuff. Get them away from that.
Yeah, smart.
And everything else. And he takes them surfing. They live in San Diego.
Yeah, it's easy for them to do that. So Woody, we have just 3 minutes left. And I know you and I had talked about, we wanted to share a little bit, and I'm going to share screen here, speaking of sharing, about the Gaia Wisdom Gathering, because this is coming up in a little bit more than a year. So I would love, Woody, if you want to talk a little bit about the Gaia Wisdom Gathering. This, by the way, was something that Mother Gaia asked me. And it's not about me, it's about serving her. But she gave me the big nudge, this event needs to happen. And then she said, you need to call Woody. So I contacted Woody last summer. It was late July, early August. And yeah, so Woody, whatever, please share about the Gaia Wisdom Gathering.
Well, the Gaia Wisdom Gathering, really what we're going to be doing is bringing elders from various parts of the world. And right now we have some wonderful people in line. One of them is going to be helping us. She's a Maya priestess. She's from the highlands of Guatemala. She was born in the San Martin area, raised, and came to school here. But then she always was called back home. And she learned all her information. Her cousin was one of the prophecy carriers. And so she's going to be working with us, and she and I had a talk, and we're going to make sure we have elders that carry the right information from various parts of the world. I went through the world and looked at it from a cultural and region, and came out with 12 different regions. And we're going to get an elder to share their wisdom, their teachings, with prophecies, the prophecy that relates to this time, what it means, and stuff like this. And a lot of it, one of the prophecies I know is for us to get reconnected with the earth and with each other, but to sort from their perspective. And so I look at the Gaia Wisdom Gathering, and it's very much needed. A lot of people have said they'd love to see this. And there are people who said that we eventually want to create a documentary and to bring elders of this type, with this knowledge and everything else is fantastic. And Ashok, you, Katie, and I, we're all working to help make this happen.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
share and everything else, because it's and that's part of what the World Council is about. Is our job is to work with the elders. So in the early years, what we did is we had elders meet elders. But the whole folks is these elders have met before. A lot of the different peoples from around the world have been in touch. Well, the Hawaiians just proved it. We just sailed around the world going west on the Hukalea.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So
So,
people keep in touch.
yeah, so we're inviting everyone here listening in, watching, to come join us in person in June of 2019. And if you want to donate, if you want to be a sponsor, I'll put that out there, because we've got to get the airfare going for these elders. We're going to need to wrap this up really shortly, Woody, because we're already to 9:15. But I want to thank Woody so much for being with us tonight. And this is the last interview. I'm very sad. I would love to have a big virtual party with virtual chocolate cake to share with everybody, to thank everyone for being here for these 8 weeks. This has been a remarkable interview. Woody, I want to tell you, there's been a big orb behind your head in the corner of your room there. And I think that one of the ancestors, maybe it's William Commanda, I know there's probably a team of them with you that's been with you all night, but some of us have been watching this orb going, okay, this is a sign that the spirit realms are supporting this interview and this conversation. So again, thank you to all of you who have been participating in this series. This is the last one. Huge gratitude and love to all of you. There's been so much wisdom shared from the first week with Linda Shea and going all the way through all these weeks. Please know that you're welcome to download all of these. And I'm going to send a message out with the link from tonight, tomorrow. And thank you so much. Please know also that this series will be available to purchase as a package. By the end of the month, I'll have that together. And so if you have friends and family and whoever that you think would really benefit from learning about the wisdom from all these different realms, please share it with them. And I can't thank all of you enough for being a part of this. And people are saying thank you to me. So we're going to sign off here. Woody, good night to everyone. And Woody, thank you. My heart is with you and the ancestor who's behind you there.
Well, can I close with a very short prayer?
Sure, that would be great.
It's a prayer in Hawaiian. It's Okakakako keoku, Okaiukamako, Mama Uno. Okakakako keoku, Okaiukamako, Mama Uno. What I'm saying, we're thanking the Creator for his gifts and for all that he has done for us. Mahalo nui. Aloha.
Thank you. Aho. Beautiful. All right. Good night, everybody.